What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Blerd Out. Today we are still off location, so it's gonna be another short episode. My bad, still trying to get some things done in real life over here, but we're gonna get back to normal here shortly. The new chapter 1118 just dropped, so of course we're gonna talk about that. And we're gonna do it a little bit different. Normally I kind of like go through the chapter chronologically, or at least I try to, but I want to talk about something that happened at the end of the chapter first, and then probably cover the rest a little bit after. All right, first, a word from our sponsors. Thank you for tuning in to Blerd Out. Whether you're listening from YouTube on my channels like Darren King Kuma or Blerd Out Podcast, or one of the many podcast sites like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more, I appreciate your support. If you want to listen to older episodes of the podcast, head on over to Patreon. If you join as a free member, you can watch all the old episodes from the old seasons for free. Plus, there'll be other content that didn't quite make it to an episode or on a YouTube video that you can check out there as well. Your support means the world. But of course, if you're not caught up on the latest chapters, episodes, and whatnot, please be warned, there are spoilers ahead.
Spoilers.
Okay, so chapter 1118. So we'll hit the cover story because we don't need to come back to it. Yamato is finally starting out on the pilgrimage. Made the rounds, got the food, got all the stuff we need to deliver. Now we're headed out. I'd like to see some traction on the story. Honestly, it's been a little bit. 'Cause what is this? So this is volume 8. So 8 cover stories of Yamato basically prepping for this. And I feel like it's going to be at least 8 of Yamato moving around Wano. Now, I'm hoping there's either a really big payoff at the end of this, or in between like the select spots of Wano, we're going to get some big reveals. I'm hoping, because I'm not necessarily tired of the cover story. I mean, the cover story is what it is. It's a vehicle to start the episode. You know, it's not meant to be anything extravagant, but I would like to get some more out of it. Okay, but on to the chapter. Because after I read this chapter, I went on Twitter and I looked at all the tweets and stuff, and I saw, and it's not everybody, and I think Twitter it's a loud minority. So I'm not gonna say that everyone feels this way, but a lot of people were heated about this chapter, specifically because of what happens at the end. And now what happens at the end here is that basically Luffy encourages Bonnie to embrace the Nika lifestyle. And he mentions he doesn't understand how her powers work, but he feels like she can do it. And off that, she uses Distorted Future and she turns into Nika. And I feel like, one, we've been building up to this particular moment throughout this entire Egghead kind of arc, right? Because Kuma always looked up to Nika as a figure of freedom, and he instilled that in Bonnie. So Bonnie looked up to Nika as a figure of freedom. Bonnie used a portion of her powers in the past and in the future to mimic what she thought Nika was. And at this point, she sees Luffy as Nika, so she's mimicking that. And it's like we've seen her use like Luffy's power similarly in the past, in the future, in the present. And it only makes sense that she would be able to copy Nika. Now, what I'll say is that it doesn't look like it's a 1-for-1. I will say that, because it feels like she's not kind of like overrun with laughter. It feels like she's following Luffy and not she's as free as Luffy. That's what I'll say. Luffy very specifically encouraged her to do this, so it feels like he's bringing her along. So I feel like what this is just a copied version of power. It's not like she is Nika. I think the whole point of Nika is that it's not specifically one person, right? Like, Nika was a god, a deity that was revered a long time ago. It obviously wasn't Luffy back then. It was a different person. And then you have Joy Boy, and then you have Luffy, who take up the mantle. So it's not like other people can't be Nika. You know, it's not some, it is special. I'm not gonna say it's not special, but it's not so exclusive as if one person is Nika, you know, that ideology can't exist anywhere else. That's kind of the point. I feel like Nika is about spreading that ideology. And to further that point, I mean, specifically with Bonnie, because while Nika spreading ideology is one thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone gets Nika's powers. So Bonnie is a very special case in which the Gorosei, you know, the highest powers of the world, were trying to replicate a fruit that could give them powers like this. Their goal was to make this fruit broken so it could do things like this. And now it's doing it. So it's like, this isn't out of nowhere. The story very clearly points the, you know, the roadmap to Bonnie doing this, whether it's using powers that are very similar to Luffy's, whether it's, you know, Saturn talking about the experimentation with devil fruits. Like this is all planned out. There's nothing crazy about this. This isn't out of nowhere. And I don't think it's gonna be something that Bonnie can constantly use. I feel like this is, I don't want to say a one-time deal, but I feel like the more it happens, if it happens a lot, like maybe she gets 2 or 3 uses out of it, I feel like eventually that kind of cuts off her ability to use it, because she has to imagine that feature being possible. So what she could be seeing right now is that Luffy is mimicking Nika, and he's encouraging Bonnie to mimic Nika. If Bonnie fully understands how Luffy's devil fruit works and that Nika is the awakening of his fruit, then I feel like that would cut off that idea of she can be Bonnie, because it has to be a possible future, right? So in this timeline, she wouldn't be able to be Nika if Luffy is the true Nika. So if she figures that out, that might just with power. I'm honestly not too worried about it. I don't think this is going to be something that really alters the story outside of what's going on here. I think, you know, we see this at the end of Egghead to get us away from the Gorosei, but the idea that, you know, this is going to be Bonnie's power level for the rest of the series, I don't think that's true. I do think that there is more to be explored with this, and I am very excited to see what's going on in the next chapter, as we don't have a break. So we're going to see these two fight alongside each other as Year 5, as Nika. I think that's hype. I don't know. I like it a lot. I just saw a lot of people were really upset about it. They were calling this chapter mid, and just a bunch of stuff, which I don't understand why this, of all things, upsets people so much. Like, I really don't get it. I feel like if you've been reading the story, this makes sense. Even as a casual or someone who doesn't like keep tabs on the story, I don't see why this would be mad to you. Or this why I don't see why this would make you mad. Like, there's it's fun, it's cool. But I mean, everyone has their own opinion. People are free to be upset with it. It just confuses me personally. But let's turn the dial back a little bit and go to the beginning, because there's a lot of good stuff in this chapter that I think gets overshadowed by what happens at the end. In the beginning, kind of starts off with the Iron Giant falling into the sea. We get a little more from the Din Din Mushi, and it's Vegapunk saying their name was. So there's somebody within the D clan that was something, and their name was something. We don't know what that is. I really hope we get a little bit more. Like, there's got to be more somewhere. But as the giant is falling, we actually get some thought bubbles from the giant itself, where it's like the giant is trying to figure out where Joy Boy went, and it's very reminiscent of Zunisha, where it's like Zunisha kind of has like the thought bubbles of conversation. That's how Zunisha communicates. This is how the Iron Giant communicates, and this also kind of pushes the theory that we did get the Iron Giant because Luffy went Gear 5. Like, the Iron Giant responded to the Drums of Liberation, not necessarily a different power source. Which I find weird, because that would mean Vegapunk at least had an inkling about Gear 5 arriving on the island, right? I mean, he could have just expected it to stay dormant. And I think that actually might have been safer. But the fact that, you know, the Giants started moving with Gear 5 and now it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's incaput, but it's like it's not moving anymore and Luffy isn't in Gear 5. I feel like that's the correlation. The fact that it's asking about Joy Boy, you know, it's got to be the deepest connection. And it says it wanted to cross paths with Joy Boy. So this makes me think that the Iron Giant's not done yet. And at the end of the chapter, when Luffy and Bonnie go Gear 5, the Iron Giant responds, "Oh, there you are." So it's possible that the Iron Giant could come back up, because I mean, this thing seems pretty indestructible. I don't know that water would really mess it up. I mean, we see that it's on fire and all it did was get knocked down, so I don't think it's impossible for it to swim back up. Another fun note is that, well, I don't know how fun it is. As the Iron Giant's sinking, you can see a bunch of marine ships like sinking down with it. So like the Gorosei just mopped like 4 or 5 battleships with the Marines. And I'm sure they weren't completely like occupied. I'm sure some of them were not on the boats, but that's still insane. Because the Gorosei just don't care about anybody but themselves. We get the living Marines looking up to Mercury because they have no idea what that is. You know, it's a giant flaming boar. And we get a few shots of the Marines seeing a lot of the Gorosei here. They're kind of chalking it up to, oh, this island is weird. You know, this island's got a bunch of weird stuff on it. So I'm wondering if the Gorosei will actually execute some of these Marines because they saw their true form. Because you're not supposed to see the Gorosei in these forms, ever. You see them, you get your head blown off. So I'm wondering if people will be allowed to leave this island. Like, Marines will be allowed to leave this island. Or if they're just going to do a clean sweep and say, nope, nothing that happened here is getting out, no matter what. We hop back to some world reactions, and the signal's been cut off, so they can't see anything. And they're basically pondering now about Vegapunk's death. And this is what I was touching on last time, which is that Vegapunk made it seem like the pirates were in the wrong here. And in this specific instance, it kind of falls back on Luffy. Because they said that Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates were holding Vegapunk hostage. So they're like, okay, Vegapunk said he got killed. He's being held hostage by pirates. He got killed by pirates. Duh. And they reinforced the idea that the government wouldn't kill him, even though he committed grave sins. So they have deep faith in the government. Because it's like, they say he committed grave sins, but no, the government wouldn't do that, even if he did break a few laws. But it's like, you guys just don't know your government. You guys don't know them at all. So they're kind of rallying up against Luffy. And I think this is, so Luffy's bounty after Egghead. We gotta see it go into the 4s. I honestly think we might see it start contesting Shanks as far as bounty wise. Now, Luffy, you know, here's the thing. I'm wondering if Luffy's bounty is going to eclipse Kaido's, because Kaido's and Big Mom's bounty should still exist. You know, it's not like they were turned in or killed from what we know of. So their bounty should still exist. I could see Luffy being like 4.8 bill. I can see him getting to 4.8 bill because of what happened here. Moving back to Egghead, the Gorosei are speaking with York and they're doing a roll call on the Vegapunks. They want to see who's still alive so they can start wiping them out. And at this point, only Lilith and Atlas remain. Now, the prevailing theory is that Lilith is coming with us. We get Lilith on the ship, and then Atlas can be destroyed or whatever. The Gorosei plan to keep York because the the brain is still functioning, Punk Records is still functioning, and they have York that can work with it. So it's like, they're not going to destroy the whole island. This is what I've been saying. They can't destroy the whole island. There's too much stuff here. So why they called a buster call here? I have no idea. They started all this chaos for nothing. This buster call is pointless because they can't destroy the whole island. They need stuff here, and they're going to keep the stuff here, and they're going to use York to interface with it. So they're not going to kill York, which I think is kind of stupid on their part, because you're openly keeping someone who, once a traitor, always a traitor. So you're telling me that this person, this genius who has access to all this knowledge and is your one ticket to access to all this knowledge, you're telling me that you're going to be able to treat them in a way where they won't want to turn on you. I would like to see that happen. They're going to do something to mess this up. It's the government. All they ever do is mess things up. But they start barreling down and checking on people because they want to get rid of the 2 remaining satellites. It's at loose ends, can't let them go. Then we jump over to the giant ship, so we're pretty much sailing out of here. Dory and Broggy hop on the ship. They got Luffy in tow. Everyone's chilling. We about to get up out of here. It's funny because they jump on here and it's like they see Oimo and Kashi, and Kashi is like dusted. Kashi got beat up by Doll. He's just like limp laying down. People are laughing at him. It's that knocked me out because I thought that was hilarious. But Bonnie ended up changing Doll and Bluegrass into kids. And this is basically their chance to get away. We got everybody up top getting ready to Kuda burst. They just need some help landing, which Frankie says she should be able to handle. I'm wondering what he's going to do for that. Because when I think about the docks on the ship, I don't think there's anything that helps it fly. I wonder if he put something in there that it can land on. It would be super cool if he copied some of the bubble technology from Sabondi. And so like when the Sunny is about to hit the water, like, you know, a big bubble comes up from below and softens the impact. That would be dope. But Mars comes flying in. He's ready for the smoke. Sanji ready for the smoke. Bonnie ready for the smoke. And of course, Luffy's eating again. Now, I think this is something that I initially was like, I don't know how I feel about this, which is we're really maximizing the Luffy eats to recharge. Like, we all know that's a thing. We all know that's been a thing for a long time, but this is probably the, what, 3rd or 4th time this chapter he's done it. I'm sorry, not this chapter. This arc he's done it. So it's like, he eats gear 5, he eats gear 5, he eats gear 5, he eats gear 5. And I just feel like it's a little too used at this point. You know, I don't see a problem necessarily with him being in the other forms. And I guess these are high level combatants. I don't think, you know, gear 4, gear 3, gear 2 is going to do it, but to kind of continuously gear 5, it just feels a little overused to me. I want it to be a little less used, a little more special. But that's kind of just like a personal nitpick. Mars starts breathing fire, which is dope. Mars's whole like design scheme, power scheme, I think that's really dope. I like Mars and Gandhi the most by a long shot. I think those two were like, one, the most competent, but 2, the best designed. So Mars is setting everything on fire. Giants are burning left and right, and they got to do something about it. And this is when Luffy switches back to gear 5. And at first, everyone thinks it's an earthquake because all the waves kind of start manipulating and shaking. But it's just because when Luffy goes gear 5, everything around him turns to rubber. So it's like the ships are starting to bounce off the waves instead of like normally ride them. And then everyone starts dancing and enjoying it. And this is when we cut back to what we talked about at the beginning, where Luffy encourages Bonnie to go Gear 5, or to go Nika. And on the design, I really like Nika Bonnie. It's adorable, and she seems super happy. There's even a panel of Kuma going, "You can rest now, Guinea. I swear I'll raise her well." And it's a flashback of when Kuma first got Bonnie, but it comes full circle because, you know, Kuma was raised to believe in Nika. Kuma raised Bonnie to believe in Nika, and now Bonnie is Nika, or is the version of Nika. So it's like this full circle experience where, you know, the thing I believed in that would save us and this world, now my daughter has become it. So if he could smile, he would. If he could cry, he would. You know, unfortunately, he's a little done up at the moment. I feel like we might get like some kind of visible emotion at some point. Maybe once Bonnie is done being Nika. But that is the chapter all in all. Like I said, I really enjoyed that chapter. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed the ending. I don't know what the hubbub's all about. I'm sure we'll see more discourse on Twitter, this, that, and the other. But like I said, I think it makes sense for the way the story was progressing. I see all the plot points leading to it. I don't see a problem with it, and I don't think it'll be a permanent thing. So this is probably just a case of, you know, chapter to chapter. Every once in a while, whenever a chapter of One Piece drops, the fandom reacts to it as if it's the last chapter. Or it's like, whatever happens next can't change what happened here. We do that all the time. I always like to reference the 3-chapter span of Luffy versus Kaido initially, where Kaido is just a bitch dragon, and it's like, he's unbeatable. He's a god. Next chapter, Luffy punches him in the head. He's weak. Scrub. Weakest Yonka. Luffy's beating him Gear 3. In the next chapter, Kaido was the GOAT the whole time. Like, that's how the fandom operates. So, I mean, this will just be the same thing. We'll see how it goes. But thank you for listening. Smash the like button, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.